Hello, all my dear students, and welcome to Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes. I am your facilitator Amit Ajmani, and in this lecture, we are starting up a new chapter, the first chapter of your biology, that is fundamental unit of life. Now, we all know that we call the fundamental unit of life to be the cells. When we define a cell, we say that a cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. By way of structure, we all are made up of cells, all the organisms. And by way of functions, we all are able to function just because of cells or the collection of cells called tissues, which in turn form organs and organ systems and hence an organism. Now, depending upon the number of cells, we differentiate and we divide these cells and organisms based on whether a single cell is performing all the functions or there are more than one cells who are performing the different body functions. We know that in many organisms such as bacteria, considering both archaebacteria and eubacteria, and in protozoa, for example amoeba, and yeast, they all consist of only single cell which is capable of independent self replication and of performing all the functions required by their body. Such organisms are called unicellular organisms. But in complex organisms, there are many cells, a collection of cells that function in a coordinated manner, and we have got different cells which are specialized to perform particular tasks. Such organisms are called multicellular organisms. Fine. Now, talking about cells, let us see how exactly the history of cells goes. Discovery of cell. The cells were firstly discovered in 1665 by Robert Hooke. He was studying a thin slice of cork. Right, now what exactly is cork? Cork is a substance which is obtained from the bark of a tree. It's made up of dead cells. So Robert Hooke, while he was studying a thin slice of cork, he saw that the cork resembled the structure of honeycomb, as in it also consisted of many little compartments. And these compartments, these boxes, were termed as cells by Robert Hooke, which in Latin means little room or little compartment. Right? So the dead cells were discovered by Robert Hooke first of all in cork. Robert Hooke discovered these cells with his primitive microscope, self-made primitive microscope. In 1674, approximately 9 years later, Anton von Leeuwenhoek, a Dutch microscopist, he made an improved microscope, and with the help of this microscope, he first of all discovered the free living cells in pond water. So Robert Hooke discovered the dead cells in cork, and Leeuwenhoek discovered the free living cells in pond water for the first time. In 1831, a Scottish botanist, Robert Brown, discovered and named the nucleus in plant cells. Then after that, in 1839, J. E. Purkinje, a Czech animal physiologist, he gave the term protoplasm. Now, what exactly is protoplasm? It is the living fluid substance present inside the cell, which we now know consists of cytoplasm and nucleoplasm. We'll study about it later in the chapter. In 1866, Haeckel established that it was the nucleus who was responsible for storing and transmitting hereditary characters. Fine. After that, in 1838, Jacob Matthias Schleiden, he was a German botanist. He first proposed the idea that all plants consist of cells. And 1 year later, in 1839, Theodor Schwann, a German zoologist, he independently asserted that all animals and plants are made up of cells. So this joint finding of Schleiden and Schwann, it forms the basis of cell theory. And what exactly is cell theory? Cell theory states that all the plants and animals are made up of cells. In 1855, another German biologist R. Virchow, he expanded the cell theory. He refined the cell theory and he presented the idea that all the cells arise from pre-existing cells. There are certain cells which are already in existence. They divide and further divide to form new cells. So cell theory was given by Schleiden and Schwann, and Virchow, he expanded the cell theory, adding one another point that all the cells which are present today have arisen from pre-existing cells. Fine. So this is a brief history of details about the cell. Who discovered cells? Robert Hooke. Dead cells, Koch cells. Who discovered living pond water cells? Leeuwenhoek. Who discovered nucleus? Robert Brown. Who gave the cell theory? Schleiden and Schwann. What was the cell theory? Who expanded the cell theory? Virchow. How? Stating that all the cells arise from pre-existing cells. Clear to all? Now talking about different types of cells. All the living organisms present on earth can be classified in these two types. What are these two types? One are non-cellular organisms. These are the organisms which do not contain any cell in their body organization. Example are viruses. Now viruses lack any kind of membrane, and that is why they do not show any characteristic of life until they enter a living body. And they use the cell machinery of the living body to reproduce and to function. And that is why viruses are also called that they are on the borderline of living and non-living. Second type of organisms are cellular organisms. Now these cellular organisms, they may contain either one or many cells in their bodies. Example of unicellular, we have just seen yeast and bacteria, and multicellular, plants and animals. These cellular organisms are further divided into two main groups. These groups are, number one is prokaryotes. Now what exactly are prokaryotes? These are those organisms which have primitive and incomplete cells. They contain prokaryotic cells in their body structure. What is meant by prokaryotic cells? These prokaryotic cells have three basic structures of a typical cell. Basic structures are there, but importantly, they lack nuclear membranes around their genetic substances, that is DNA. The nuclear material of a prokaryotic cell consists of a single chromosome, and this single chromosome is in direct contact with the cytoplasm. Here we do not have a well-defined nucleus. We have an undefined nuclear region in the cytoplasm which is called nucleoid. Why? Because there is no nuclear membrane around it. And in a prokaryotic cell, the other membrane bound organelles such as mitochondria, plastids, etc., they are also absent. So these are the primitive and incomplete cells. In prokaryotic cells, ribosomes are present, and they include archaebacteria, bacteria, cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria was earlier known by the name of blue-green algae. This is about prokaryotes. Now talking about the second type of cellular organisms, these are the eukaryotes. These are advanced organisms with complete cells. They contain membrane-bound nuclei, and all other cell organelles are also membrane-bound. They are called eukaryotic cells. And such cells are found in unicellular as well as multicellular plants and animals. They contain plasma membrane, they contain nucleus, they contain DNA, they contain cytoplasm, they contain ribosomes, and they contain cellular organelles such as mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. We'll study all these in detail. So basic differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell, you need to remember the differences. To sum up all the points which we have just studied, we will see the differences. The prokaryotic cell, their size is generally small. It is 1 to 10 micrometer range, and we know that 1 micrometer is equal to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. So their size is generally small. And when we talk about eukaryotic cell, their size is generally large, ranging from 5 micrometer to 100 micrometers. Now in prokaryotic cells, their nuclear region is poorly defined. It is undefined, containing only nucleic acids, and they are called nucleoid. Whereas in eukaryotic cell, their nuclear region is well defined and is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. Prokaryotic cells, only single chromosome is present, but in eukaryotic, more than one chromosome is present. In prokaryotic, the membrane-bound cell organelles are absent, whereas in eukaryotic, membrane-bound cell organelles are present. Now in prokaryotic cells, chlorophyll is present and it is associated with membranous vesicles, which are the bag-like structures. But in eukaryotic cells, the chlorophyll is associated with plastids. In prokaryotic cell, the division of these cells take place by the process of either fission or budding. No mitosis takes place. Whereas in eukaryotic, the cell division takes place by the process of mitosis or meiosis. So these are a few differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. Now let us try to relate the structure of cells, right? Depending upon which cell it is, the three major functional regions of the cells are the cell membrane, which is also called the plasma membrane, and cell wall, the nucleus, and the cytoplasm, right? All the cells differ in their shape, in their size, in their activities. Everything may be different, but three major functional regions which are present is outer covering. Inside the cell, there is a nucleus and cytoplasm. Just the basic idea of how exactly a cell looks like. This is a cell in which we have a outer covering. I am highlighting it. There are so many labelings which we are not required to do right now. Right now, we will just be concerned over the first outer covering. This outer covering is called the plasma membrane. When we are talking about an animal cell, this covering is the plasma membrane. Now, in this, we have got this particular part which is called the nucleus. And apart from the nucleus, all the fluid content inside the plasma membrane is called cytoplasm. These are the three main things which are the three basic structural functions, such structural parts of a cell. Now in this cytoplasm, we can have numerous small cell organelles. There are so many of them. We can see the whole diagram, so many labelings, but we will do them one by one, and we will get back to this diagram again after studying the details of the various cell organelles. Then you will be able to relate it better. The basic three things we have seen: plasma membrane, nucleus, and cytoplasm. This is an animal cell. Now when we talk about a plant cell, in plant cell we have a separate, distinct, extra covering, which I am marking right now. And this extra covering, the outside covering, this is known as the cell wall. This outer covering is called the cell wall. This is, here it is. Inside the cell wall, again we have this kind of internal covering. This internal covering, which I am marking right now, this is the plasma membrane, right? Nucleus is at one side. This is the nucleus, and apart from the nucleus, all the things which are left, that is basically the cytoplasm. In this cytoplasm, again we have got many things. We'll study differently. So when we talk about a plant cell, three basic things were there: the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the plasma membrane. These three were present in animal cell also. Here we have got an extra outermost covering, which is called cell wall. This is in addition to what we have seen in animal cell. Rest in structure, in functions, most of the things we will be discussing and trying to relate the differences, right? So when we just consider a plant cell, in plant cell we have got these four things. What all are these? Outer covering is cell wall, then we have got plasma membrane, then we saw the nucleus and the cytoplasm. When we talk about animal cells, in animal cells we have got plasma membrane, we have got nucleus, and we have got cytoplasm. There is no cell wall present in animal cell. Now in both the cells we can see the plasma membrane present, the nucleus present, the cytoplasm present. So let us try to discuss all these one by one. First of all, we'll be talking about plasma membrane. Now, this plasma membrane is also known as cell membrane, and this cell surface membrane or plasma membrane, it is the outer covering of each cell. It is present in cells of plants and animals and microorganisms, right? It is a living, thin, delicate, elastic, selectively permeable membrane which is made up of lipids and proteins. This is selectively permeable, means it permits the entry and exit of some selected material in and out of the cells. That is why it is called selectively permeable membrane, because everything which has to go inside the cell has to pass through plasma membrane, right? So permeable means it allows the entry and exit of things, and selectively permeable because it permits the entry and exit of only some material, not everything. This is about plasma membrane. This is the outermost covering of animal cells. Now we'll be discussing about two type of processes. One is diffusion, one is osmosis. What are these processes? Diffusion is the spontaneous movement of molecules from a region of higher concentration to one of lower concentration, and this movement continues until uniform concentration is finally achieved. Clear? Now when we talk about osmosis, osmosis is also spontaneous movement, but it is the spontaneous movement of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane. This is called osmosis. In this process, it is basically the passage of water from a region of higher water concentration to a region of lower water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So if we try to relate the differences between diffusion and osmosis, what are the various differences between diffusion and osmosis? Let us try to relate. These are the differences between diffusion and osmosis. Diffusion occurs in any medium, but osmosis occurs only in liquid medium. Diffusion is the random or spontaneous movement of solute or gaseous molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration, whereas osmosis is the movement of solvent particles from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Diffusion, molecules may be solid, liquids or gas, but in osmosis it is the movement of solvent particles only. In diffusion, semi-permeable membrane is not required. It is present or not present doesn't make any difference. But in osmosis, semi-permeable membrane is required. So these are four differences between diffusion and osmosis. Now talking about various types of solutions, we need to relate these. There are three types of solution as we know. One is hypotonic solutions, another are isotonic solutions, and the third one are hypertonic solutions. Now what are these? Let us try to understand each one of them individually, talking about the hypotonic solutions first. If the medium surrounding the cell has a higher water concentration than the cell, that means it is a very dilute solution. Now what will happen is the water outside is more, so therefore the cell will gain water by the process of osmosis, because the water from outside, it is at higher concentration, it will go inside the cell which is at lower concentration. Such a dilute solution is called hypotonic solution. And because water is going from outside the cell to inside the cell is likely to swell up, or it will become inflated, or we say that it becomes turgid, and this process is termed as endosmosis. The process is osmosis, but because the water is moving in the cell, that is why it is called endosmosis, right? Now if the medium surrounding the cell is of exactly the same water concentration as the cell, in that case the concentration outside the cell and inside the cell both are same, so there will be no net movement of water across the plasma membrane. Such a solution with exactly the same water concentration is called isotonic solution. And because the water concentration is same, there will be no overall movement of water, so there will be no change in the size of the cell. The cell is going to maintain its original size. And if the medium has a lower concentration of water than the cell, that means the cell is kept in a very concentrated solution, then what will happen is the water amount is more inside the cell as compared to outside, so the cell will lose water by osmosis. This type of a concentrated solution is called hypertonic solution. And because now the water from inside the cell is moving out, therefore the cell will shrink, and this phenomena is termed as exosmosis. Whether it is endosmosis or exosmosis, both are types of osmosis, but we have differentiated. Why? Because in endosmosis water is moving inside the cell, and in exosmosis the water is moving out of the cell. So these are the three types of solutions. If we keep a cell in a hypotonic solution, it will swell. If we keep it in a hypertonic solution, it will shrink. And in isotonic solution, there will be no change. Based on this phenomena, we have seen many common observations that when we will keep dry resins in water, they swell. Why? Because water moves inside the resins, endosmosis takes place. That is why they will swell. But if we will keep the grapes in a concentrated salt or sugar solution, they will shrink because of the process of exosmosis. Clear? So these are the various types of solutions. This is about diffusion and osmosis. Next, we'll talk about the second basic structure of cells, that is cell wall. This cell wall is present only in plant cells. It is not present in animal cells. We all know it, right? And this cell wall, it is very rigid. It lies outside the plasma membrane. Now, this cell wall is non-living and is freely permeable. It is secreted by the cell itself for the protection of its plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and all the other cell organelles which are present in the cytoplasm. This cell wall determines the shape of a plant cell, and this cell wall is made up of a fibrous polysaccharide carbohydrate called cellulose. Now, this cell wall plays lot many important functions in a particular plant cell. Number one, it permits the plant cell to become turgid. When water enters the vacuole through the process of endosmosis, the plant cell expands. Now, if the plant cell is expanding, then the cell wall has to be strong enough to resist this expansion, and it enables the cell to tolerate that pressure and to become turgid. This cell wall is quite rigid, so it provides mechanical strength to support the cell. It is freely permeable to water and substances in solution, so it allows the entry and exit of the contents. So these are the functions of a cell wall. Now there is a process called plasmolysis, which you need to remember. Whenever a living plant cell loses water through osmosis, obviously the water is being going out, so there will be a shrinkage or contraction of the protoplasm away from the cell wall. This phenomena of contraction of protoplasm away from the cell wall is called plasmolysis. Got it? So this is about cell wall. We have seen two membranes. One is plasma membrane, which is also called as cell membrane, and another one is the cell wall. What are the differences between the two? Just try to relate the differences. Cell wall occurs in plant cells only. It is not found in animal cells. But plasma membrane is found in both plants as well as animal cells. The cell wall lies outside the cell, whereas plasma membrane, it lies to outside of animal cell but inner to cell wall in plant cells. Cell wall is non-living and it is quite thick, whereas plasma membrane is living and is quite thin. Cell wall is rigid, whereas plasma membrane is quite flexible. Cell wall is freely permeable, whereas plasma membrane is selectively permeable. Cell wall is made up of polysaccharide, cellulose, hemicellulose and pectin, whereas plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins along with small number of small oligosaccharides. Let me come to the difference. Correct. They are made up of small number of small carbohydrates, that is the oligosaccharides. The major function of cell wall is protection and providing strength to the cell, whereas the major function of plasma membrane is to hold the cellular contents and to control the passage of materials in and out of the cell. Fine. So this is the difference between plasma membrane and cell wall. or we can say these are the differences between cell membrane and cell wall. Clear to all? Right. Now, coming to the next, third and most important basic structure which is found in all type of cells, that is nucleus. Let us see a few details about nucleus. The nucleus is a large centrally located spherical cellular component. Now, we are using this word centrally located, but this centrally word is used only for animal cells, because in plant cells it is not centrally located. We'll see a bit later what exactly and why exactly this nucleus is in center in animal cells, whereas it is on sides, corners in plant cells. Right? Now this nucleus is bounded by two nuclear membranes, and both these nuclear membranes, they form a nuclear envelope. This nuclear envelope separates the nucleus from the cytoplasm. Very important thing is that the nuclear membrane that we have talked right now, it contains many pores called the nuclear pores, and encloses the liquid ground substance that is called nucleoplasm. Now what is the function of these nucleopores? These nucleopores allow transfer of materials between the nucleoplasm and the cytoplasm. Correct? Now coming to the nucleoplasm, within nucleoplasm we find two types of nuclear structures embedded in the nucleoplasm. One is the nucleolus and another is the chromatin material. Now what are these two? Let us try to relate one by one. The nucleolus, it may be one or more in number, and it is not bounded by any membrane. Quite importantly, it is rich in protein and RNA. What is RNA? Ribonucleic acid. And this nucleolus acts as the site for ribosome formation. And that is why it is known as factory of ribosomes. Now these ribosomes, they help in protein synthesis in the cytoplasm. So nucleolus basically is rich in protein and RNA, and it acts as the site of ribosome formation. This is called factory of ribosomes, and these ribosomes further help in the process of protein synthesis. This is the first nuclear structure present in the nucleoplasm. The second one is chromatin material. Now what exactly is chromatin material? Chromatin material is a thin thread-like intertwined mass of chromosome material, and it is composed of the genetic substance DNA and proteins. What is this DNA? We know this is deoxyribonucleic acid. Now this DNA stores all the genetic information which is required for the cell to function, to grow, to reproduce. All the information is stored in DNA. We have already studied that the distinct segments of DNA are called genes. These are the segments of DNA. Now the chromatin is condensed into two or more thick ribbon-like chromosomes when the cell is about to divide. Right? So these are the details of chromatin network. Apart from nucleus now, the all fluid substance left in, whether it is plant cell or animal cell, that is the cytoplasm. Now what is cytoplasm? It is the part of the cell which occurs between the plasma membrane and the nuclear envelope. This is cytoplasm.